Hey guys, after many days of waiting for new information concerning the PS5, since there was no announcements in the last month, PlayStation has recently released a deep dive video about the PlayStation 5 full specification presented by the lead system architecture Mark Cerny. It's more a technical presentation rather than a marketing presentation, as this talk was for the CDG Expo this year, but because of the coronavirus outbreak, it was eventually cancelled. And so for this video, we are going to talk about all the confirmed things for the PS5, so let's start. In this presentation, Mark Cerny started first with the introduction of the newest hardware for the PS5, which is the SSD. And not only just an SSD, but this one is going to be the fastest SSD than any other SSD available in the market. This new SSD will have 5.5 GB per second of bandwidth, comparing to the PlayStation 4 hard drive that take at least 20 seconds just to load a 1 GB, including the seek time and even with the compression, because of how the files are distant from each other in the drive. But with the newest hardware, there won't be no seek time, and it will only take 0.27 seconds for loading 2 GB of data. Not only that, but even with 16 GB GDDR6 of system memory, things will be much faster, even 100 times faster for games, since the most of the RAM will work efficiently with the games, and loading data from the SSD to the RAM won't take much time. There is also a custom flash controller for this SSD that is connected to the main custom Zen 2 chip over PCIe 4.0 and with a 12 interface channel that will support the promised bandwidth of 5.5 GB per second. As for the size, Mark Cerny stated that it will have 825 gigs of space. He even stated that the size could be more, but because of how this custom controller doesn't come cheap, and so they need to be responsible to the gaming audience in terms of the price of the console. The PS5 will also support certain M2 PCIe SSDs on the market, but they need to have the same bandwidth that Sony is promising. Those drives will have their own flash controllers. So Sony says that they will have to come up with a list of which drives that will fit in the PlayStation 5 and which have worked well in testing. It's possible that these drives won't be available until after launch, according to Cerny. So don't plan on buying a drive today and using it later in your PS5. You can also use an external hard drive, but only for the compatible PS4 titles. Now, with all these complex technical words, we know how much the SSD is going to be a huge improvement on games. First, there won't be no loading screens, no waiting for games to start, plus no waiting for patch installs, and that ability to install only parts of the game. Even the streaming from the storage will be much faster, and that is something that the developers are so excited about, because of how it is hard for them using the hard drive for streaming. But with the SSD, you can stream large areas at super high resolutions in a blink of an eye, and that will change how games are going to be made. Moving on to the GPU, it is a custom chip based on RDNA 2 technologies with a compute unit that is 62% higher than a PS4 CU, with 448 GB per second of memory bandwidth, effectively delivering 10.3 teraflops of performance, and it will have lower power consumption than previous chips. Also with new features that are the geometry engine that allows for primitive shades to synthesize geometry on the side and to be rendered, as well as improvements to visual effects. Plus, there is the ray tracing feature that is also coming to the PS5. Ray tracing won't be required, but developers can use it for the audio, global illuminations, shadows, and even reflections. Now, power consumption needs to be focused on too, since the big games like God of War, for example, need a lot of power, and therefore fan will be extra noisy, and that is where the PlayStation 5's use of variable frequencies comes in, which it will run at a constant power and let the frequency vary based on the game. And there is the usage of AMD's Smart Shift technology that will send any unused power from the CPU to the GPU, and so the CPU's frequencies is capped at 3.5 GHz and 2.23 GHz for the GPU, but they won't be always on these variable frequencies. Cerny said that for the worst case games it will run at a lower clock speed, but not too much lower. And finally, we have another feature that is also new to the PS5, and that is the 3D audio. Audio is very important in games, and it wasn't improved for the previous consoles until the PS5, using a custom processing unit called the Tempest engine for the 3D audio. This new technology will make the sound more realistic, and as it will appear from multiple directions. Like when you have something, for example, like raindrops, you will be able to hear them coming from many different directions. Also, you can even track where objects are located. Like if an enemy is sneaking up on you, you will be able to tell that. So it will help you feel a sense of presence as if you were transported to some other world. One challenge that Sony is facing is that we all hear sound differently and our ear canals are all different. So audio researchers have been taking measures of how we hear, calling it head-related transfer function, or HRTF. Each person has a different HRTF, which it can be measured in a special lab. At launch, the PS5 will come with 5 HRTF presets, but things are going to be improved over the next years. Even though this technology is at its best when using headphones, it will also be for every sound device, such as TVs and even surround sound speakers. Now, comparing all these features and specs to the PS4, we can tell that this is a huge upgrade for the performance, but for the next Xbox console, Xbox Series X, well, that's something different, as it turns out that the new Xbox will have 12 teraflops, that is slightly bigger than the PS5, but lower frequency for the GPU. They all have pretty much the same CPU frequency, the same RAM capacity, but different for their memory bandwidth, where Xbox is using a splitted bandwidth, 10GB of RAM at 560GB per second and 6GB at 336GB per second. And also it will have a 1TB SSD, but with lower bandwidth that Sony is using. And we don't know if it is all gonna be used for the games or maybe only the same size just like the PS5 is using. Speaking of PlayStation, Sony has reassured us that even with the coronavirus outbreak, the launch date will not change, and they even declared it in their website. So yeah, the PS5 is still coming on holiday 2020. Another information that is for the OS, well, Sony said that they want to make the PS5 user interface as easy as Netflix. Keep in mind that these are only some approaches of what could the OS be, so nothing is confirmed yet from Sony. And that's it guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, leave us in the comments on what you think of these specs and which one of these consoles would be the best. And until then, stay home, stay safe, and I'll see you later in another video.